Guys, welcome back to a special edition of the Dog Suit. Today, we're sitting down with our friends Priya Rana and Parth Modi, the founders of You, Me, and MD, an Instagram page with over 192,000 followers. Their content primarily focuses on teaching medical concepts in a fun and innovative ways. Join us today as we dissect social media, the mechanics behind scale, and most importantly, the value of building a community. Welcome, guys. How's life?
First of all, thank you so much
Thank
for
you for
having
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 us.
us here, Sharon. Life is good. We have been relaxing here in India, but yes, life's good.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So getting right into it. All right. I think the first question that everybody has in their mind is how did you, me, and MD begin, and why did you guys start it?
You wanna take
Yeah.
that?
Yumi and MD started technically on the ground floor of the library of our college. But way before that, we've both always wanted to create something. I had a podcast. He also had started YouTube at some point. So we always wanted to do something. We always wanted to create something. We'd always had that spark in us. Then it was our step two prep time. And right in the middle of it, somewhere, we would always study when we'd come down to the walk down the library stairs. We'd be talking to each other. Oh, oh, wait, this interesting thing had come up today when we were studying, all of that. And then the next time that would come as a question, he'd be like, oh, you remember that thing you told me? I got that question. And it would happen both ways. And we thought, like, we're already teaching each other. We can just do that on camera. And if it's giving so much value to us, we're sure it'll help people. So that's how it all started.
So
Oh,
if I
wow.
can jump in.
Mhm.
Uh, Also, what happens is that a lot of people want to create something, but many things hold them back. Like they
Hmm.
feel like what they are creating isn't good enough. And the same
Right.
thing happened with us that we had recorded like 10 to 15 videos before we'd even created an account. And even after recording 10 to 15 videos, we had not started the account. And then
Hmm.
one evening I was sitting and I was like, okay, if we keep delaying it, it's never
It's
going to
happening.
happen. We need to start it.
Mhm.
And so I edited and posted 10 videos in one day. And I made the account and I put all of them up. And then I was,
Without sharing it even with
yes,
anyone. It was a zero views, zero followers, zero following wala account with 10 videos.
10 full reels. And then it was like, okay, we've started it. Now we need to continue. And
So
that's how we started posting every day.
I think so. That's the complete journey of how Doxwood also began.
Exactly. That is exactly what I was gonna say. Go ahead.
Sharon and I were like thinking of planning the podcast, getting the guests, working on it. We were like, "Kab karenge, kab karenge." I mean, when will we do it itself? And then what happened was we just went for a trial run, and then we got the guests. We interviewed all of them. We had like five guests already recorded, and then we started uploading them.
Right. And I
But
think
that
this
is
happens
that.
with everyone. I mean, the important thing is to like start. Don't chase perfection.
Ye-
Just start doing it and then you'll learn along the way. So
But yeah, when you're working with Sharon, you need to chase perfection.
My friend. But I think so. You guys bring up a very important point, which is like it's not like when everybody begins, they are one at the even their production value is at that level, or even the script or the idea behind everything is at that level,
Mhm.
right? Where like everybody seems to focus on the final finished product, but getting there is also a process, and I feel like that is missed in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
as you said, I think when people begin, there's a lot of ridicule, there's a lot of like criticism on like, oh, this looks okay, this is not so good, you can do this better. But
Mhm.
it's so much easier to talk as an audience rather than create, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
So there's this quote, and I don't remember who it's from, but I read it in Brené Brown's book. It's the quote of the arena. Uh, it's not the. Hold on. You guys continue. In 1 minute, I shall find the quote
Okay.
and I will read it. It's a beautiful quote.
Okay.
All right.
So,
So, while Freya is engaged, Parth, can you tell me, like, I think all of us inherently understand the upsides of being a creator,
right.
right? But does it ever get exhausting? Like, what are some of the downsides and how do you deal with them?
Right. I think Priya has got the code. So will
Go for it.
we
Go
share
for
that
it.
I
first
got the
and then
quote.
I'll continue.
Okay, so the quote is "The Man in the Arena" by Theodore Roosevelt. It says, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, comes short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold, timid souls who neither knew victory nor defeat."
What? I think we're gonna
Wow.
print this out, and every time like we feel like we're doing okay, I'm just gonna read this to myself and go to sleep.
She's explaining my life.
Oh.
Explaining my life. All right, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I think that's a
Yeah.
good thing. All right, so I'm gonna rephrase that question for you guys. All right,
Yeah.
we all inherently see the upsides of being a creator on social media. I think everybody understands, or at least we think we do.
Yeah.
But does it ever get exhausting? And what are some of the downsides that come with social media, and how do you deal with them?
So I think there are multiple downsides that come with social media. The first one being like it's not technically a downside, but it's a cost. It's the cost of social media that if you're creating content every day, like that amount of our time and energy is going into it every day. So that's the cost. I don't think it's necessarily a downside because we find it valuable.
Right.
The downsides can be that when you put yourself in the public presence, just like the quote Priya said, that there will be people who will comment on that, people who will give like 2 seconds of attention to you and then may form an opinion. And
Yeah.
it's very easy to get affected by these opinions, both positively and
Right.
negatively. That is, if someone like makes a bad comment or tries to troll you, it takes a hit on your self-worth, that self-esteem. And also, if there are a lot of people who are kind of like praising you, or if you're suddenly gaining a lot of followers, then that kind of gets to your head and takes you away from what you originally are. You don't stay grounded anymore. So all of those things
Interesting.
can happen when you put yourself in the public eye, when you start engaging with a lot of people. And
Right.
so that can be a huge downside or a cost. And it's very important to know that like through all that you remember who you are, you remember where you come from, what you want to do, what your original mission is. And that I would say is one of the biggest downsides and how you can manage it.
So I
There's
think so. Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, there's also one more that a lot of people don't think about to begin with, is that you start looking for content in
Right.
everything you do, and you lose the
Right.
sense of being present in the moment, for the
Correct.
moment. Or if you are having a conversation, you're thinking, okay, wait, can I get something out of this conversation?
Right.
Can I do something? Can I maybe make a kind of like you start thinking that way. If you're studying, like for us, it was that we're studying, we look at the question, oh, this could make a good video. But then you stop staying present in the moment, which I think is something that people
Big
don't
cost.
realize yeah.
That is
Yeah.
so interesting. That is so interesting. Mohit, sorry, you were going to say something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Parth actually raised two valid points. How to really take control of your emotions, right? When creating content. Sometimes you get criticisms, you make better content. Sometimes you think it's amazing, so you reduce that hard work that is required to really put out that good content. One more thing I really found very difficult when it comes to content creation on its own itself, right? So when we're starting at first, we have a lot of ideas, right? We can put this. So after the 10 ideas, you run out of ideas. Now the question is, how do you really find more content to put out? How do you really, as Priya stated, how do you really live in the present to make content that is you really feel like making it, you know?
Right.
Resonates with your heart, like that truly resonates with your heart, rather than like you know that this is something that might work. That is,
Right.
I
Mhm.
feel like that is another thing, right? Like there's a difference between what you started whatever it is that you're creating for, and what you know will work, right?
Right.
And
So
then do you stay true to what you started this for, or do you like sell your soul to the
Go
devil
with.
and like go for scale? Exactly.
Mhm.
right. So personally, I think we've been lucky kind of that the thing that we create, that is we create how to make studies easier. Like there are learning tricks and tips. And because medicine is so vast, we never run out of syllabus.
That's
Like
true.
Yeah.
yesterday I was
That's
solving
actually
some
a
mock questions. Yesterday I was solving some questions with my friend, and like I solved 13 questions with him, and out of 13 questions, I got ideas for two reels. And those ideas came naturally. I wasn't even looking for them. So
this is called picking the right market, Mohit. That's what
right.
this is. That's
This
picking the
is
right market, like unlimited supply of ideas, and then you create a channel and you're like scaling.
this is this is called focusing on the right purpose, what I've
Yeah.
realized. So, uh, if it is a purposeful driven Instagram page or YouTube page, I think so it fairly does well, right? The reason is you're just solving one problem now, and the opportunities are limitless, right? Like example, education on its own, the syllabus is too vast. As Parth clearly stated, you'll never run out of content for that.
And also,
Go ahead,
yeah.
go ahead.
So the thing is, it's not just education. Like, for example, even if you look at the content that you are creating right now,
Hmm.
so what are you doing? You're basically learning from people and you're
Correct.
sharing that with others. And learning from
Correct.
people is something that you'll always want to do and you'll continue doing that. And I don't think that that gets very tiring. So you do something like that, that you are on that journey yourself and you keep sharing that journey with everyone. So I think if
So
you do that, then
documenting, it's more rather than sitting on top of a mountain and
exactly.
giving yarn, you're actually like documenting the climb,
Mhm.
uh, to that peak, rather than sitting at the peak and telling people this is how you get there. You're documenting that peak, documenting the climb. I think
That
that's
is
what you're
very well.
I love that.
alluding
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
right?
Uh, yeah. Another question I had was, so I mean, there are hundreds of USMLE influencers out there. I personally know like 10 to 15. What makes you really different, and why do you think you were able to scale compared to the other people who reached that scale, but then they plateaued, but you're still scaling at the same rate?
You want
Okay.
to take that one?
Yeah. So
Prayer, like, it seems to be a little difficult. Path, you handle it, please. I'm chilling here.
Okay, the different. कोई ना, continue.
so the again that thing comes here, that the niche that we've chosen is like we teach medicine, and I think teaching is something in which everyone has a different style. And because there are so many people out there, you'll all no matter how many teachers there are, you'll always find people who will be matching your vibe, or who will be your tribe kind of, like who will find your content most relatable, or they'll find your style most palatable. And that's the same reason that you see that there are so many lifestyle coaches out there in the world. And even if though there are so many lifestyle coaches, all of them are doing so well. So education is something where people naturally find people who match their style. And another reason why, like another question that why we have been able to scale. First of all, I'd like to say that the rate of growth can vary. Like even for our channel or our page, like some months will gain like 40,000, 50,000 followers. Some months will be 10, 12,000 followers. So that can change drastically. But what's important is that you stay consistent.
Hmm.
And that's how, like, I think growth in social media occurs in two ways. One is that one piece of your content goes viral, it gets like millions of views, and you get a lot of reach suddenly overnight. And then the
Hmm.
second is that you create something every day and that gains little traction every day. So there's like small but accumulated growth. And I think we've done progress every day, and we've also been lucky enough to have some viral videos,
Like a mix of
and that has
both.
kind of like kept it going.
Which makes complete sense. I think so. It's tapping out the algorithm, right? Consistency is what people prefer. Obviously,
I,
creating a viral video is difficult.
I
Right.
have one more follow-up here. Like again, I see so like if you open up Instagram and you literally type in USMLE or USMLE teaching, there are like Mohit alluded to, there are so many people. so many people who are doing something similar, right? And like you said, everybody's a different teacher, everybody has their own style. I think the core question here is why do you think your style has resonated as
Right.
opposed to others? Like, as opposed to all of these other people who also have their own brand, or own brand of teaching, own way of
Right. Right.
teaching. Why do you think your particular style has resonated with so many people?
I
Uh,
think
yeah, I
there
can.
might be two things. I don't know
Mm,
which ones you're thinking of, but I was thinking that number one is people like interactive things, and for us, a lot of it was conversational. So it didn't feel like a book was hitting your head, but at the same time, you were getting some knowledge out of it. So it was the
Nice.
interactive and the conversational part of it, and because it was the two of us, we were able to do that. And another thing which a lot of people told us was that they found that it was more raw. Like it was more, you just come in front of the camera and you're saying it. Like you're not thinking that it needs to be perfect. There's fumbles. So they also relate to that. Acha, okay, this person is also human. They're fumbling. They're
mm,
also like us. So I think both of these things were the points that I was thinking of that I
right.
think people
And the
liked.
beginning also comes into play, like how we started this, as Priya said, that
Yeah.
we were talking to each other and we started recording. So what we're basically doing is we're talking to another person, and that style stayed. And because when that happens, that when you're talking to one person, but now that person is like, you have that on camera, the audience also feels like we are talking directly to them and not talking to the camera. If
The
Talking
vibe
at
is
the
the
yeah,
camera.
vibe is
talking at
essentially the right. So I feel like the vibe, Mohit, is having it's like having the two of them in the same room as you, and instead of them talking to each other, it's like a three-way conversation with the audience. But they're in the room, like you can feel it that they're in the room with you, as opposed to them talking through a phone. Am I like, is that
yeah,
what you're alluding
yeah,
to?
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that makes a lot of sense. You were able to create that personal connection with the audience, what I call it, and that's what's very important when it really comes to, let's say, community building, which is really an integral part of what we are looking in the future generation, like the Gen Zs. And why do you feel community building itself is very important for you? How did you build a community of your tribe itself?
Okay. So I think we are still building our community, but
Yeah, I think everybody is, buddy. I don't think
yeah,
anybody's going to stop.
yeah, exactly. Uh, well, I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
Oh, so let me rephrase it, right? So we all are Gen Zs as of now, correct?
Hmm.
So Gen Zs believe in a very important thing called community building. They all resonate with the community,
Right.
and it's an integral part of Gen Z. So how did you find the right niche for your community?
So I think first of all, community building, I think, is not just a Gen Z thing. I think it is a human thing
Yeah.
that throughout history, like if you go back thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
But the second thing is that, okay, I have a story to share here. So when I was preparing for step one, I was in my last phase of preparation where I was like I was taking NBMEs and I was getting like lower scores than I wanted. And I was kind of like disappointed, feeling hopeless, wondering what to do. I went on YouTube and I found a video where there's a guy, a US MD, or I think a Caribbean graduate, something. He talks about how he like converted his score from 220 to 250 in less than 4 weeks. And he just talks about his journey, like what happened and how he progressed. I watched his video. I applied some of his things. They were helpful. But I think the more helpful thing was just knowing that someone went through this and it was possible. Knowing that fact alone, that gave me hope that, okay, this is actually possible. This is doable. And then I ended up doing that. And
I see.
so that's the same thing that we want to do here, is that we know how much other people have helped us. And then right now we're in the place like we are done with the exams. So we want to give that back, and we want to create a community for our juniors, technically, like not necessarily age-wise juniors, but people who are still in the
On
beginning
the
of their
way.
journey. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's where our community is coming from.
Makes sense. And what do you think when building a community are the three main principles that should be adhered towards building a community, according to you, could be according to your journey and personal reflection?
Okay. So I think this is something that we are still like, the thing is that we do
We
have a lot.
understand. again,
Yeah.
both, I think before you answer that question, let us
Yeah.
be clear. We all understand that none of us are at the peak of the mountain. We're
Right.
making that climb.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But when you're 30% of the way there or 25% of the way there, there are lessons you've learned or picked up that you didn't know when you were at zero. So we're talking about your perspective at that point of time, right? Like we're not assuming that you're at the peak. I don't think anybody here is going to be at the peak anytime in their life. We're going to continue to grow,
Yeah.
right? So taking that into context, go ahead.
Okay, so the first thing I would say is being honest with your audience
I was
is
just gonna
that
say
you're
that.
not trying to sell something. Like it's not just a product, but you're not even trying to sell your content to someone, making them watch something. It's like just being genuinely honest with them and providing actual value. I think that's a very simple answer, but I think a core principle of what we have done till now and what we want to continue doing. And is that when you are honest and giving actual value, people will respond, and there will be people who will find that valuable. So that's how people will connect with you. Anything you want to add?
I think the other one would be that you fundamentally need to come from a place of wanting to help. Like it comes from the place of fundamentally being a good person who wants to help rather than holding things back also, because I think especially like in a lot
Mhm.
of educational communities, or I don't know how else to frame that, but there's a lot of thing of like there's competitiveness, there's a lot of gatekeeping, there's a lot of wait, if I tell them this they're gonna get a higher score than I am, and then
That is
everything's
so
gonna
true.
but then ultimately I think communities are built on mutual trust, so you need to trust
That's
and they need
beautiful.
to trust. So
That
Hmm.
is very well said. That is very well said. And you're right. I think both Mohit and I have kind of gone through that process ourselves. While we were prepping, we still are. I mean, it's still like we're in residency, and that competitiveness and the gatekeeping and all of those things still persist. But I think what you alluded to, I really like that. I felt that deeply. I think that was really well said.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, since you already have a very good amount of followers on your, let's say, social media channels itself, and how do you maintain true to your purpose? That's number one. How do you really avoid all the distractions that you see while really creating content for your community? And why do you think it's important in that way as well?
I think it's really difficult in this world of so many things where we're all also scrolling, so we're all also seeing, we're all also trying to see, oh, but this particular hook works better, or everything that goes with social media going with growth. But I think every single time, I think we both keep each other accountable, so when one person goes into that space, the other goes
Pulls them
pause.
down. So that does happen. That does happen, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
So
So
you
can you give
can,
us an example of that? Because I think that's very important to kind of I think it'll help everybody else realize that even at that level, it's possible. Right?
right.
All of
So
us doom scroll and get distracted on a day-to-day basis, but even at that level, it can still happen. Yeah.
right.
Example.
Okay. So for example, what happens is that so there are, I think, two things Priya talked about here, but the one thing is that when you're creating content, you'll also know other people who are creating content in the same space. For
Yeah.
example, we are creating content where it's kind of like medical education, and we're then giving them tips or tricks to make it better or smarter. And then we know other creators who are doing the same thing. What will happen is that inadvertently, you'll also scroll through Instagram or
Their feed.
whatever,
Right.
and you will see what others are doing, how they are doing, and that will affect you in some way.
Right.
Even if you are extremely self-aware, like you already know that this can happen, I don't need to be affected by it, but that does happen. And then what happen? So for example, what happens is that if we've been putting a lot of effort into our content, and then for some reason that content is not doing well, and then we'll see that okay, someone else's content is doing well, like with less effort than we perceive less effort than the ones that we put in our content. So
We
that will affect,
perceive.
okay, why is
Important.
this happening? Like this is not fair, or what can we do to change that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for
You
sure.
have
For
you
sure.
have you have a benchmark to compare. Hmm.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
that's really good.
the other person brings this one back saying that, okay, dude, look, where did we start? We started that we are studying and
Mhm.
we want to provide that value
Right.
to our audience unfiltered or like honestly, and not think a lot about like how to
Scale.
optimize,
How
like
to manipulate
manipulate.
manipulate is seems like a negative word, but optimize was a good
Yes.
word.
So
Optimize.
just stay true to what we have been creating, how we have been in the past, and come from that same place, not change the place based on rewards. But oh, yes. So when we started creating content, we had decided one thing, that no matter what happens, no matter whatever response we get, we will keep creating consistently for 6 months. We will not look at the results. And luckily, we got a lot of positive response before that. But just keeping that same mindset that we are not doing this for some reward at the end of this process or for some result. We are doing this because we love doing this.
Makes sense.
That's an amazing idea, but it's so difficult to kind of stick to that, right? Like I can
It is.
imagine it would be, and especially when you're operating at that scale, like I would imagine that's amazing. And I think, yeah, I think that's a great support system that the two of you have going.
So, so one question I have is it's completely different from the content creation and community creation itself. As we know that medical education, right? How do you think it's going to change? What is the changes have you seen amongst your juniors? It's a very important perspective to have to how we really adapt towards the future generation of medical education. And then I'll leave everything to Sharon after this. Yeah.
That's
No, that's a very good question. I think there's less of a change between like our generation and our juniors because we are still just like 5 years since we started, 5, 6 years since we started MBBS. I think there's more of a change between the earlier generations and our generation, so to speak,
for
because
sure.
of
sure.
internet and everything. The one thing of course that has changed and will change a lot is AI and how it plays into medical education as well. The change that we are seeing right now, or we have personally felt, is that because everything goes more and more online, sadly, there are a lot of students who don't want to learn clinically, and they will learn clinically when they enter residency. But then what happens is that med school kind of becomes like a trailer for what you actually want to do, where you're just there to pass that preliminary thing and then do the specialty that you want to do.
Yeah.
And so you become more and more specialized, but you lose a lot of general touch. And I think that has changed, like that's the change that has happened in recent years.
Yeah. I call
It's
it
like
a Bachelor of Science, technically, MBBS, where you truly
Bachelor of
learn
Science.
you truly learn
But
in residency.
that's
so to add to that, honestly, like I think when I started MBBS, it was 2016. I feel like an old fart right now, but 2016 was when I started my MBBS, right? And I see my juniors who maybe started in 2018 or 2019. And it's like they've had a very different med school experience than I have, even in 3 years. Right?
Right.
Like year on year, I see, and maybe it's a college thing. I don't know if this is a global phenomena but this has just been my personal experience that just because everything is so accessible now, on the internet, everything is online. I feel like they are so much more self-aware. They know what to do. They know what needs to get done when. Um, and at the same time, I feel like at times, because the information is so accessible, you don't work hard to get there. And then that's
Mm,
why your fundamentals are kind of weak,
right.
right? Because it's kind of like if you have Google Maps for navigation all the time, you are great when you have Google Maps, right? But you don't know how to navigate your own city because you never had to. And I
that
feel like
is true.
that's happening in a lot of things, but in medical education specifically, where yes, you have all the answers at your fingertips, but through a portal. Like it's not here, right?
Right.
It's
Yes.
through a
So
portal.
a similar thing, like, yes, there is a change that I've seen, that like when we started MBBS in the first, second year, no one was talking about like, okay, what you want to do after MBBS and how are you going
There
to
you
prepare for
go.
that. The point was, if you're in first year of MBBS, just study that. Like, live your
Yeah, you're doing
first year
anatomy,
MBBS life.
you're doing
Yes.
physiology, you're doing biochemistry.
And that
That's
is
what you're
your life.
focusing
If
on.
it's
Yeah.
anatomy, you're in the dissection lab, you're trying to learn
Mhm.
things. And then what we've seen is that over the last couple of years, students from first year will come up and ask us that, okay, we want to do USMLE. How do we optimize our
Yes.
profile? How do we build our
Correct,
CV?
correct. From day
And the thing
one,
is,
right? Like you're tunnel vision from day one. The
right.
problem is like that tunnel vision doesn't help you when your fundamentals are all over the place, and you need those core fundamentals of just general. And if that's also easy, and you never pick up the skills to adapt, right? I feel like that's the thing. Like, yes, the kids are amazing. I'm not like, I think they're far more effective at medical school than I ever was and will be. But
Hmm.
at times I've noticed that, that if they've not struggled, and I feel that because my parents or my seniors, the people who are 5 years older to me, they didn't have YouTube and the internet to study from, right? But
Yes.
they studied from like books, right? Like,
Hmm.
and their medical knowledge surpasses mine even today.
Right.
Right? Even though I had access to all this information, they literally had books, and
I mean,
they just knew, they just knew medicine. You
that's
know
very
what I mean?
subjective, right? That's very subjective, right? So books previously was not much updated. Now we have so much vast knowledge, right?
No, for sure. We do. I'm talking about the fundamentals here. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about the top line knowledge of like, what randomized control trial is saying. Those things we will know much better because we have
Yeah.
access to that information. I'm talking about the core fundamentals.
Hmm.
Like,
I think
can you
the
imagine
person that you
anatomy? Yeah,
become,
like
yeah.
can you imagine anatomy from reading Grays versus watching a three-dimensional video? Of course, the guy who has access to the 3D video is better, right? But that skill of being able to comprehend anatomy from reading something and to be able to visualize it, I think that skill is also
Hmm.
important. I
Yeah.
just, again,
I
sorry
think
for
it's like,
going.
Learning. Sorry, what were you saying? Yeah.
no, like you can go ahead.
Learning is a very effortful process, right? If you read, let's say, Guyton's physiology, you really take your time to understand that one page of gibberish, right? Which makes no sense. That's learning as well. Compared to if you go to YouTube, you look at the same concept. Yeah, it will make your learning easy. It will make you understand the concept faster.
Will
But
it stick?
I don't know about whether it will stick, as you
Exactly.
mentioned. Yeah,
Because look,
But
like
I
the
think
whole
what
AI thing that you just mentioned, right? Like the whole AI thing that you just mentioned, like
hmm.
yes, AI will give you a summary of whatever it is you need to read and it'll help you pass your exam. Great. But does in a way, like if I feel like when you study that and you simplify it, you take that difficult concept and simplify it in your own way and then make it teachable to somebody else. I feel that is where learning happens,
And that is the
right?
skill that you develop.
Correct,
Like,
correct.
yes, but I think it is, again, this is kind of, I would
Subjective.
let me agree with like Mohit, because it is a double-edged
Yeah.
sword. Like, there are, like, of course, consolidating knowledge from a lot of sources and then creating something, like you said, Sharan, is a good thing. But also, like Mohit said, that just because the fact alone that you have access to these amazing resources, you are able to learn
So much more.
much in a much
For
better way.
sure. For sure.
That is subjective. But this thing, that definitely, that just for the students who are starting out from their first year, knowing what you want is a good thing, but like also you need to go through the process and then go towards what you want, and like not just have a tunnel vision. That is something that I've definitely seen change in the like last 4 5
This
years.
is this is essentially the IIT coaching classes in sixth standard. This is the
Right.
equivalent of that's what this is,
Hmm.
right? And it's happening sooner and sooner. Like even when I'm doing residency here, I'm sure Mohit also knows, there'll be like medical students or pre-med students who are doing research in some subspecialty of some medicine. Like there'll be like people doing EP research, people who are like 20 years old, right? And they're doing research in electrophysiology, right? Because like that's where they want to end up 15 years from now, right? And
Yeah.
that's the equivalent of, oh yeah, I'm gonna start studying for JEE or NEET in sixth grade. That's essentially what this is, right? And I don't know how we're gonna be able to stop that. I don't think. You know what that reminds me of, Mohit? It's like, remember in Superman, every human being or every resident of Krypton was
Hmm.
encoded with the DNA and with a specific job that they're going to have throughout their life. I feel like that's where we're headed in some
Yeah.
way.
I mean,
So
although
weird.
med school didn't give me time to watch Superman, but I do resonate with you at all.
That is sad and true for a lot of people. Anyways, moving
Yeah.
on. Last question, guys. Would you advise other people to pursue this path? And if so, what would you want them to know before they begin?
You wanna take this one?
So I think we would both say that yes, we would advise anyone who actually enjoys content creation to definitely go for it, because medicine has, as a field, it has that scope of you becoming tunnel visioned, as we talked about. And
Sure.
when you go for something that is that requires you to build so many skills, because it does, like you learn how to video edit, you learn how to emotional regulate, you learn so many things, and all of these things that you learn are skills that help you become an overall more uh
Complete
wholesome person,
Multifaceted.
human being.
multifaceted yes, that's the word,
And
multifaceted.
one thing like content creation, especially, is something where you learn how to speak.
That's a big
And
one.
that is, I think, the single most important thing or beneficial thing that can come out of it is because as you do that, you are going to learn how to do it better. And speaking, communication is something that helps you connect to other people. And throughout your life, everything will be decided based on how you communicate with other people.
Especially in
So
this profession.
not just this, I think in any profession,
Any profession.
since it's an
Yeah.
extremely technical place, in any profession, the way you communicate with another person, it plays a huge role in what happens with your life. So you learn that, and I think that's amazing. So definitely, if this is something that
Very
you are
insightful.
interested in, you should definitely go for it. Oh, one other thing that I would like to add here is that specifically for us as doctors, I feel like we have a lot of value to give to the world, especially when you see social media from a regular perspective and you see that there are so many people creating so much content, and you realize that a lot of it is like you could add a lot more value than what you are seeing right now.
Such a nice and diplomatic way of saying what Path actually wanted to say, which I'm not going to say on camera, but let's keep going. Let's keep rolling. Sorry.
And this is the thing that I think for doctors, like in India, you have everyone has phones right now. Even in the remotest of villages, you'll have phones, you'll have access to internet. So you have so much digital access, and yet there's a very low level of medical literacy.
Hmm.
Right.
Like
That is wow.
cities,
Wow. Hmm.
even in big cities, there's a very low level of medical literacy. And all of us must have seen something or the other that, for example, in our college, we've seen multiple times that a patient whose foot is like completely gangrened till their ankle, they'll come after that to the hospital saying that they thought that they didn't need.
This is okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That is
I think
interesting.
as doctors, if like this becomes a collective effort where more and more doctors come on social media and they talk, like what we do is medical education, but for medical students, if doctors start doing that more for the general population, you can increase medical literacy, and that is kind of like a
Hmm.
human living conditions goal that would like that social media can change.
But
Yeah.
that'll only happen when, as Priya pointed out, that it has to come from a place of wanting to help people, not to build a business, right? Because again, you have to understand social media is essentially you're marketing directly to people, right?
Hmm.
So if you build a brand and you say it's just like what we have right now, which is like supplements and right and like, oh, you're 12 years old now, you need Botox injections. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
like that entire I feel like that section has ballooned so much. And what you're alluding to, which is like actual medical, like actual, just it doesn't necessarily have to be complicated things, like simple things. There's definitely a gap there. more
Yeah,
probably as
I
a
do.
business idea now to build a company in that space.
No.
Damn
I do
sure, yeah.
completely resonate with this, right? So the reason we also started the dog suit, right, was just to have genuine conversations. We never intended to really build a business out of it or monetize it in such an aspect. I mean, we just wanted to generally talk to people and understand what's really working, how to fix the healthcare system. Not like we're going to end up fixing it or something, but just to understand and have a different perspective. So the genuine connection of really helping people really matters.
Yeah, I think it's been a fun ride. I think we're having a lot of fun. I'm sure you guys are having a lot of fun also on your ride. I like in my opinion, I feel that is what keeps us going. Every conversation is different, and I'm sure for you, every video or every piece of content you put out, every concept, it's different, and that novelty keeps you going, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Well,
That
I
kind of
think
feedback helps because a lot
feedback,
of people,
yeah,
like when people say that, okay, this is something that helped them, that also helps
yeah,
us going when things get mundane because it does happen that uh, ultimately it's just medical education in snippets. But then when someone said, oh, I got this question in my Viva and I remembered it because of you guys,
that's awesome.
sometimes in the mundane days, it keeps you
That is awesome. No,
Hmm.
I think that's such a good feeling. That is such a wholesome feeling, I feel.
going.
Uh, but I guess that's all from our side. Thank you, both of you, for coming on the Dog Suit. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Um,
guys. Really appreciate it.
uh,
It was a wonderful conversation.
Likewise, we had a great time right now.
Mhm.